The Irish and Celtic Music Podcast, show number 718, The Irish Rebellion in Wexford. Welcome to the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast, helping you celebrate Celtic culture through music. I am Marc Gunn. I'm a Celtic musician and also host of Folk Songs and Stories. This podcast is for fans of Celtic music. We are here to build a diverse Celtic community and help the incredible artists who so generously share their music with you. If you hear music you love, please email the artists, let them know you heard them on the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast. Musicians depend on your generosity to release new music, so please find a way to support them. Buy a CD, album pen, shirt, digital download, or join their community on Patreon. You can find a link to all the artists in the show notes along with showtimes when you visit our website at CelticMusicPodcast.com. You can also email follow at bestcelticmusic.net to learn how to subscribe and get a free music-only episode. You'll also find out how to submit your band to be featured on the podcast. So last month, I led my Celtic invasion of County Wexford. We visited the National 1798 Irish Rebellion Museum, and I learned a lot. So in the summer of 1798, in the town of Enniscorthy, a spark was lit that echoed across the centuries, inspired by the ideals of liberty and self-determination that fueled the American and French revolutions. Ordinary Irish men and women rose up against British rule, hoping to shape a freer, more equal Ireland. This was interesting. The United Irishmen, a movement of Protestants and Catholics alike, dreamed of unity, but their rebellion was met with brutal force. There's some horrible stuff in that museum that were like, wow, they seriously did that? It's kind of crazy. But the most haunting chapter, it came to a head on Vinegar Hill, where rebels made their last stand. So, though the 1798 rebellion was crushed, the spirit behind it lived on and became a quiet current beneath Irish history, resurfacing again in 1916 during the Easter Rising and carrying through to modern Ireland. I really didn't know much about the 1798 rebellion. I've heard a lot about the 1916 one, so this was a really fascinating museum to visit. So today's episode features songs and tunes inspired by the 1798 rebellion. These are songs of hope, defiance, heartbreak, and memory. This episode is not about blame, though. These are about telling the stories of those who dared to dream of freedom. And we kicked off the show with Maggie's Wake. That was Harrison's Way from their self-titled album. I'm going to start it off with one of the songs that I was like, oh, is that where that's from? The Rising of the Moon is a song that I'm going to sing to you. It's from my album, St. Patrick's Day. Here I am with Rising of the Moon.
Oh, come tell me, Sean O'Farrell, tell me why you hurry so. Hush a buckle, hush and listen, and his cheeks were all aglow. I bear orders from the captain, get thee ready quick and soon. For the pikes must be together by the rising of the moon. By the rising of the moon, by the rising of the moon. Yes, the pikes must be together by the rising of the moon. Then come tell me, Sean O'Farrell, where the gathering is to be. in the old spot by the river, quite well known to you and me. One more word for signal token, whistle up the marching tune, with a pike upon your shoulder by the rising of the moon, by the rising of the moon, by the rising of the moon, with your pike upon your shoulder by the rising of the moon. Out from many a mud wall cabin, eyes were watching through the night. Many a manly heart was beating for that blessed warning light. Murmurs ran along the valley like the banshee's lonely croon, and 1,000 pikes were flashing by the rising of the moon, by the rising of the moon, by the rising of the moon, and 1,000 pikes were flashing by the rising of the moon. All along that singing river, that black mass of men were seen. High above their shining weapons shone our own beloved green. Death to every foe and traitor, whistle out the marching tune, and her army poised for freedom by the rising of the moon, by the rising of the moon, by the rising of the moon, and her army poised for freedom by the rising of the moon, by the rising of the moon, by the rising of the moon, and her army poised for freedom by the rising of the moon.
I sat within the valley green, I sat me with my true love. Me sad heart strove the two between, the old love and the new love. The old for her, the new that made me think on Ireland dearly, while soft the wind blew down the glen and shook the golden barley. 'Twas hard the woeful words to say, to break the ties that bound us, but harder still to bear the shame of foreign chains around us. And so I said, the mountain glen I'll seek at morning early, and join the bold united men while soft wind shook the barley. While sad I kissed away her tears, me fond arms round her flinging, the foaming shot burst on our ears from mountain for blood without remorse. I've taken that old Art Hollow and laid my true love's clay cold corpse where I full soon may follow. As round her grave I wander drear noon, night and morning early with breaking heart, whene'er I hear the wind that shakes the barley.
to be taken. We're all from the last ranch east of down Pedrick, where lies poor little Jimmy Murphy on the sweet green mossy banks. Kilmaine, Kilimanjaro, whiskey frisky too. city with our hands tied behind us, and the ladies cried pity. We're all from the last route east to Downpatrick, where lies poor little Jimmy Murphy on the sweet green mossy banks. Kilmaine, Kilmaine, whiskey, frisky, tooraloo. Wasn't hanged for sheep stealing, but for courting a pretty girl, and her name was Kate Whelan. We're all from the last route east to Downpatrick, where lies poor little Jimmy Murphy on the sweet green mossy banks. Kilmaine, Kilmaine, whiskey, frisky, tooraloo.
After Marc Gunn came the almost Irish band with Wind That Shakes the Barley and Cuckoo's Nest from some singles that were released many years ago. It was on my Song Henge Volume 21 compilation that went out a long time ago. Then came Avourneen with the Wind That Shakes the Barley from Sparrow. Téada was after that with Farewell to Stoneybatter, Unrive Tuag on gCarraig, March at Kilmore. That's from their album As the Days Brighten. And we finished up the set with the Ciderhouse Rebellion with Molly Donnery. That was Jimmy Murphy from A Little Bit Slanted. So yes, The Wind That Shakes the Barley, Jimmy Murphy, those are both songs from the Rebellion. I want your feedback. What are you doing today while listening to the podcast? You can send a written comment along with a picture of what you're doing. We've had a busy summer. I'm sure you've been to some Celtic festivals, right? I hope you have. And if you have, then send some pictures. Let me know who you saw, who your new favorite band is. If there's a new CD, a Celtic CD or a Celtic band that you saw, send it to me. Email me at follow@bestcelticmusic.net. So Monica emailed, and I really liked this message. I know she said she didn't need this shared. She wasn't looking for glory, she says, but I really like the message because it just shows the people all around the world. So she said, Monica wrote, I discovered your program 2 weeks ago, soon after St. Patrick's Day, which was very special to me, not only as a great fan of Irish Celtic music, but also as a mom of 13-year-old Beauty, who was born on March 17th. Happy birthday to her. My name is Monica, and I'm from Asturias, another Celtic region close to Galicia in Spain. I'm living in Brittany now, so I hear your shows from France. I was very pleased with your podcasts, which I suddenly found them on the iTunes library. I've loved the 3-hour St. Patrick's Day special, and I've recommended the shows to my brother, who lives in Pakenham, Ontario. Thank you for all this excellent work and keep broadcasting. Greetings. Thank you so much, Monica. I really appreciate you sharing your little story about it. Again, one of the things I love about these messages, it's to me, it's not about glory anyways. It's mostly for me, it's about just hearing the stories and sharing them, because people love to hear where this music is all around the world. I don't know about you, but I love hearing from Asturias to South Africa to Japan to Ukraine to Canada to just South America. everywhere there are people who love Irish and Celtic music, and I love being able to share that music and your stories. So please keep your stories coming. If you have a story, send it to me. Follow at bestcelticmusic.net. Ali Stockton commented on Patreon, I'm listening at work this morning. Sean emailed, love the music, listening from Newfoundland, Canada. I absolutely love everything about this station. Jeff Laszlo emailed, listen to this week's podcast as Mary and I drove to Greenville for the Scottish Games and Galibre. Lucio Tapero emailed, hi from Alaska. I have a friend who's active in our Celtic community here that insists I should send you our Irish pub music CDs for your podcast. How can I do that? We do have digital versions and we have CDs as well. Cheers, Lucio Tapero. Thank you so much. She's from the band Rogues and Winches. You can find them at roguesandwinches.com. And it's very simple. You just send an email to follow at bestcelticmusic.net. You'll get instructions. But there's a URL, forcelts.com. It's very simple. You just type that in there, complete the form that takes less than 2 minutes, and you are good to go. So thank you. I look forward to sharing your music. Finally, Woodland Folk sent a photo of his fiddle and a bottle of wine. I love it. Thank you so much. And let's get back to the music. David Pedrick is up next with Tintern from his album On the Way. Now, you may have heard of Tintern Abbey. It is an abbey located in Wales, but there is also one in Wexford. And we got to explore that abbey and why it is also called Tintern and whatnot. Turns out the guy who founded this abbey was from Wales and had a connection to the original Tintern Abbey. So it was really fascinating. And it was a gorgeous, gorgeous abbey, or remains thereof. So here's David Pedrick.
Stand silently still. The battle is over where hundreds were killed. It's a ghostly reminder where men stood alone, where the rebels of Wexford tried to take back their homes. Vinegar Hill was where the rebels would stand. 10,000 plus with pikes in their hands, surrounded by British, bombarded at will, on the men who were stranded on Vinegar Hill. Push back the invaders and make the land free. On the hill above, Enniscorthy, it was the last stand in Wexford. Their muskets were still, came to an end on Vinegar Hill. Men, women, and children climb Vinegar Hill, defend off the British from the land that they tilled. General Lake and Father Murphy with pikes in their hands stood side by side to protect Erin's land. Push back the invaders and make the land free on the hill above. Enniscorthy, it was the last stand in Wexford. Their muskets were still, came to an end on Vinegar Hill. They were shelled for hours, but their fate was unknown. When Ireland's rebels launched a charge of their own, they broke through the lines. It was kill or be killed, but the ring, it was tightened around Vinegar Hill. Push back the invaders and make the land free on the hill above. Enniscorthy, it was the last stand in Wexford. Their muskets were still, came to an end on Vinegar Hill. Today it is calm, with no sound to defeat. A peaceful Ireland is all that they seek. Listen and you'll hear them, though the battle is stilled. Rebels are defending Vinegar Hill. Push back the invaders and make the land free on the hill above. Enniscorthy, it was the last stand in Wexford. Their muskets were still, came to an end on Vinegar Hill. Small hill in Wexford stands silently still.
pool of oak as the sun was setting o'er the bright May meadows of Shalmalir. A rebel hand set the heather blazing and brought the neighbors from far and near. Then Father Murphy from old Kilcormick spurred up the rock with a warning cry. Arm, arm, he cried, for I've come to lead you, for Ireland's freedom will fight or die. Let us on against the coming soldiers and the cowardly yeomen we put to flight. 'Twas at the Harrow the boys of Wexford showed Bookie's regiment how men could fight. Look out for hirelings, King George of England, search every kingdom where breeds a slave. Father Murphy from the county Wexford sweeps o'er the land like a mighty wave.
After David Pedrick came Kennedy's Kitchen with Vinegar Hill from the Hotting Fire. I was wondering why it was called Vinegar Hill. That seemed like a weird name. And thanks to, I've been doing my Duolingo on a regular basis and found out that the name was basically Vinegar Hill, or not Vinegar, I think it is. But so basically comes out to Vinegar Hill. So I was like, fascinating. Okay. Things you learn. It translates to Hill of the Berry Tree. So very cool. After Kennedy's Kitchen came Pipedance with the Mountain Road, Jenny picking cockles, The Woman of the House, and Rakish Patty from The Pleasures of Hope. Then Boulavou from Sheridan Rúitín, that was from Rebels in the Night. Boulavou is an Irish ballad that commemorates the events of 1798, obviously, but specifically with the actions of Father John Murphy. Apparently, it was written by Patrick McCall in 1898, a century after the rebellion. And we finished up the set with Robert Zielinski, that was Flax in the Broom, and The Green Groves of Erin from Day Dawn. Thank you so much, patrons of the podcast. Because of generous patrons like you, the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast releases new episodes nearly every single week. Your support doesn't just fund the show, it fuels a movement. It helps us share the magic of Celtic music with thousands of new listeners and grow a global community of Celtic music lovers. Your contributions pay for everything behind the scenes, audio engineering, stunning graphics, weekly issues of the Celtic Music magazine, show promotion, and most importantly, buying the music we feature from indie Celtic artists. And if you're not yet a patron, you're missing out. Patrons get early access to episodes, music-only editions, free MP3 downloads, exclusive stories and artist interviews, a vote in the Celtic Top 20. Join us today and keep the music alive, vibrant, and independent. Now, if you notice things missing on Patreon recently, I have an apology, and I want to tell you about the change that I had made. So the podcast hasn't recovered from the income drop at the beginning of the year. It is $500 less than it was every month. So as you can imagine, that is a bit challenging. All the expenses that I make did not include. They were designed to include that $500, so I've been struggling a lot more over the past few months. So I made a few tier pricing change a couple months ago. Currently, the lowest level is $4 per month. The Songhanger level is $12 per month. Celtic Legends is $30 per month. I also changed what it is on each tier, and this is where the issue occurred. I moved the music-only tier to the Songhanger level. So if you want to hear music-only episodes, that is where you want to be. Now, right now, the basic patron of the podcast level includes the public episodes before regular listeners, and you get to vote in the Celtic Top 20. Plus, they're all ad-free. And there's a chat room, and I also thank you on the podcast. You get blogs and reviews. So all that stuff comes at the basic level. There's a lot right there. But the Songhanger level includes all that, plus music-only episodes, Irish and Celtic music interviews. I'm actually hoping to expand on that a little bit. There's exclusive Celtic videos, and I hope to expand on that in the future. Some full-length audio concerts and digital compilations. And of course, the Celtic Legends level gets you thank you in the podcast at least once a month. I added a new tier also, which is we are now looking for underwriters for the podcast. If you have a business, band, or an individual, I will announce you each and every week on the show. It is $100 per month. My hope is that those things will help boost that monthly income, so we can, lower that deficit of $500 that we're running shy of. So I do appreciate your patience, and thank you so much for all of your continued support. A special thanks to our new and continued patrons of the podcast: Jan Feed, David D, Annette Mocker, Lan Kelly, and Cadence Watson. Thank you so much for your generosity. Here is your 3-step plan to support the podcast. Number 1, go to our Patreon page. Number 2, decide how much you want to pledge every month: $4, $12, $25. Number 3, keep listening to the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast to celebrate Celtic culture through music. You can become a generous patron of the podcast on Patreon at songhenge.com. River Drivers are up next. This is from their album Live at Steel Stacks. This is Kelly, the Boy from Kilmaine, another old song about the 1798 rebellion.
What's What's the news? What's the news? So me bold Shelmalier, with their long barrel gun from the sea. Say what wind from the south brings a messenger here, with a hymn for the dawn of the free. Goodly news, shall you bring youth aforth? Goodly news, shall you hear, bargy man? For the boys march down from the south to the north, led by Kelly, the boy from Killan. Tell me who is that giant with the gold curling hair, he who rides at the head of your band? 7 feet is his height, with some inches to spare, and he looks like a king in command. Ah, my boys, that's the pride of the bold Shelmalier, the greatest of heroes of man. Fling your beaver aloft and give 3 ringing cheers for John Kelly, the boy from Killan. In Escarthes and flames, and old Wexford was won. Tomorrow the Barrow we will cross. On the hill or the town we have planted a god that will batter the gateway to Ross. Oh, the Farthmen and Bargyman will march over heath, Raibh Harvey to lead in the band. But the foremost of all in that grim gap of death will be Kelly, the boy from Killan. But the bold sun of freedom grew darkened at Ross, and it's set by the Slaney's red waves. And poor Wexford, stripped naked, hung high on a cross, with her heart pierced by traitors and slaves. Glory, oh, to those brave sons who died for the cause of long downtrodden man. And glory, oh, to my lances, oh, darling and bright, of this Kelly, the boy from Killan. Glory, oh, to those brave sons who died, the cause of long downtrodden man. And glory, oh, to my lances, oh, darling and bright, of this Kelly, the boy from Killan.
dance, you can sing, you can come along to the land called Ireland where you can feel at home. There's one way to get there if we're going tonight. We'll drink more of the rare old stuff and get the feeling right. Away I'm going, I'm halfway through the door, so I guess it's time to drink some more. Away I'm going as Ireland calls me name. After one more drink it won't be the same, be the same. In a bottle, that is what I need to take me back to a place where the fun's guaranteed. You can walk into a pub and hear the fiddles play. You can sit out on the countryside and get drunk all day. The people are all friendly, they'll say hello. If you're ready for Ireland, then come on, let's go. Cause there's one way to get there if we're going tonight. We'll drink more of the rare old stuff and get the feeling right. Away I'm going, I'm halfway through the door, so I guess it's time to drink some more. Away I'm going as Ireland calls my name. After one more drink it won't be the same, be the same. Go! I'm halfway through the door, so I guess it's time to drink some more. Away I'm going as Ireland calls me name. After one more drink it won't be the same. Away I'm going, I'm halfway through the door, so I guess it's time to drink some more.
Dear, now did you hear the news that's going round? The shamrock is forbid by law to grow on Irish ground. No more St. Patrick's Day, we'll keep his colours, can't we see? For there's a cruel law against the wearing of the green. With Napper's Andy and he took me by the hand. Said he, how's poor old Ireland and how does she stand? She's the most distressful country that ever yet was seen, for they're hanging men and women for the wearing of the green. Colour we must wear is England's cruel red. Let it remind us of the blood that Ireland has shed. And pull the shamrock from your hat and throw it on the sod. But never fear 'twill take root there, though underfoot 'tis trod. When the law can stop the blades of grass from growing as they grow, and when the leaves inside summertime their colours dare not show, then I will change the colour to I wear in my carbine. But till that day, please God, I'll stick to wearing of the green. But till that day, please God, I'll stick to wearing of the green.
After River Drivers came Emerald Rose with Mountain Fae from their album Sunwise, then the Bloody Irish Boys with Enniscorthy in a Bottle from Drunk Rock, and we finished off the set with Kilmaine Saints, Wearing of the Green from The Good, The Plaid, and The Ugly, which of course is the same melody as Rising of the Moon, which I played at the beginning of this show. Apparently the Society of United Irishmen adopted green as its color, and of course it was banned. It's funny that one of the things that I've long associated with the Irish Rebellion was the religious aspect of it, and it turns out that that was a later addition to the split. Both Protestants and Catholics wanted to split from Britain back in 1798, and so things you learn. I want to remind you to vote in the Celtic Top 20 for 2025. This is our way of finding the best songs and artists each year. You can vote for as many songs and tunes that inspire you in each episode. Your vote helps me create this year's Best Celtic Music of 2025 episode. You have just 3 weeks to vote this year, and you can find a playlist on YouTube where there are some of the tracks as well. You can check those out. I am running behind on my votes. I feel like I don't even know where I'm at right now. So I like to vote in the Celtic Top 20 because it helps me understand how things pan out, how it works, and if it works easily. Right now, I'm finding that summertime does not work easily, but that nevertheless, get those votes in, and we can find out who's going to be the best next year. So next week, on July 28th, we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast. I cannot believe that we've been doing this for 20 years now, and I really appreciate everyone who's been supporting the podcast for these many years. And I'll talk about it a little bit more. Maybe we'll do a little, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Maybe a little retrospective. If there's something you want to hear that you think would be a great reminder, something that says the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast to you, drop me a line. You can send it to follow@bestcelticmusic.net. But nevertheless, I cannot wait to celebrate with you. We will have the next episode. That's it. 20 years of Celtic music. Thank you so much for all of your generous support. We're going to finish up with Derek Warfield and the Young Wolfe Tones. This is The Dying Rebel. This actually is inspired by the 1916 Easter Rising, but the Wolfe Tones and Derek Warfield have, and now his new group with the Young Wolfe Tones, they have long been sung songs inspired by Irish Rebellion and whatnot. So I thought it's a gorgeous song, and I wanted to share it with you. So I hope you enjoy this. Here is Derek Warfield and the Young Wolfe Tones. Talk to you again next week. Sláinte.
Was dark and the fight was over. The moon shone down the common street. I stood alone where brave men perished. Those men have gone, they're gone to me. My only son was shot in Dublin, fighting for his country bold. He fought for Ireland, and Ireland only. A harp and shamrock, green, white and gold. The first I met was a grey-haired father, searching for his only son. I said, old man, there's no use searching, for up to heaven your son is gone. My only son was shot in Dublin, country boast. He fought for Ireland, and Ireland only. A harp and shamrock, green, white and gold. Broken-hearted, bending low, I heard him say, I knew my son was too kind-hearted. I knew my son would never heed. My only son was shot in Dublin, fighting for his country boast. He fought for Ireland, and Ireland only. A harp and shamrock, green, white and gold. The last I met was a die and a rebel. Bending low, I heard him say, God bless my home, and bless the cause for which I'll die. My only son was shot in Dublin, fighting for his country boast. He fought for Ireland, and Ireland only. A harp and shamrock, green, white and gold. A harp and shamrock, green, white and gold.
The Irish and Celtic Music Podcast is produced by Marc Gunn, the Celt Father, and our patrons on Patreon. The show is edited by Mitchell Peterson with graphics by Miranda Nelson Designs. Visit our website to follow the show. You'll find a link to all the artists played in this episode. Todd Wiley is the editor of the Celtic Music Magazine. Subscribe to get 34 Celtic MP3s for free. Plus, you'll get 7 weekly news items about what's happening with Celtic music and culture online. Best of all, you will connect with your Celtic heritage. Please tell one friend about this podcast. Word of mouth is the absolute best way to support any creative endeavor. Finally, remember, our planet's future is in our hands. The overwhelming evidence shows that human activity is driving climate change, from record-breaking heat waves to rising sea levels. But the good news, we have the power to fix it. Every choice we make, reducing waste, conserving energy, supporting clean energy, and lobbying our political leaders, moves us towards a more stable climate. Start a conversation today. Let's protect the land and people that we love. Promote Celtic culture through music at CelticMusicPodcast.com.